I want to introduce Marge Mlodzik.
Well, I know practically everybody that's here, so you probably know me, or you've heard me or seen of me. Growing up, I grew up in Washira County on a farm, very similar to the farms around here. Most people had 80 acres, 160 acres, 15 or 20 cows, a few pigs, chickens, some had sheep, some had goats. Most of it was dairy cows, and each farm was pretty self-sufficient. They raised their own vegetables. All the farmers had big gardens, and every basement was filled with blue canning jars, the 2-quart, the 1-quart. They all had big gardens. Usually they had a little fruit orchard, a few apple trees, and maybe some pears, and grapevines. Lots of the farmers made their own wine. My uncle was a great winemaker. So that each farm was pretty self-sufficient. A lot of the farmers had, and some of the things would do to the wife, where the men in the family did the hard work, but the women also helped out in the fields a lot too, frequently. When it came to shocking oats in the summertime, or when it came to making hay, they helped with a lot of the things. The women knew how to drive horses. The horses, the first year when I was married, we still had horses on the farm. We had an old tractor, but did most of it was horse work. And we were making hay, and there was a terrible season for horseflies. And the horseflies attacked our horses, and they ran away with me. We ran clear across the field until they came to the next woods. And finally they came to the stop. My husband and his brother were running after us, yelling at the horses. I was almost afraid to start driving them again. But because I had started with horses, my grandfather lived with us. He always took me along, and he'd let me hold the reins. You know how you get the little kid up sitting on Dad's lap, and he's got the steering wheel, and he's driving the car. Well, I was holding the reins, so I figured I knew how to drive horses too, but not really. It was farms pretty much like around here, and it was all rural schools. The city schools were just involved with the kids that lived in the city limits. The rest were all, and it was set up, the state very nicely had set it up so that no child would have to walk more than 2 miles to go to school. So there were a lot of rural schools. Some were quite big. At times we had up to 30 kids in our school. That would include all 8 grades. So we had one big grade. There were 5 boys and 1 girl in that one grade, and it went all the way through the 8 years. But most of the time it was 3 or 4 kids to a grade.
How far did you have to walk?
What?
How far did you have to walk?
Just a quarter of a mile.
Quarter of a mile, okay.
It was just really up the road. In fact, the teacher boarded. At one time, my folks had boarded the teacher, but then my mother thought it was better if the teacher boarded at the neighbor's house instead of at our house. That there wouldn't be any favors shown, to her kids and things like that. But it was close. Sometimes we had the winter of '36. Was, if you look back in the newspapers and the articles about how much snow we had, it was terrific. There was one day when there were only 4 of us in school. The boy who lived across the road from me, my cousin, who had stayed overnight with us that night, my cousins used to stay back and forth, and the neighbor boy from the next farm up a quarter of a mile up the road the other way, and the teacher, because she only had to walk the quarter of a mile. But there were about 3 or 4 days where there was just so much snow, and it was so cold and so windy. Then when the trucks came through with the snowplows, they plowed the road, and there was no place to put it. So the banks were like yay high on each side, and then they put extensions on the plows and plowed it out further over the top. And this was great. We thought we could almost almost reached the telephone wires and the electric wires when we walked on top of the snowbanks. But that's a very definite memory of mine. We used to have ice storms once in a while, and if we did, the whole road was icy. It was just a gravel road at that time. But if it was nice and icy, and we kids loved to take our sleds and slide down. It was a hill going down, and you got a nice long slide. It was a long walk back up. But and our folks were always worried that another car is going to be coming. But we'd watch, there wasn't that much traffic when there was that much ice, and all the cars that were traveling they'd put the chains on the tires. Remember, some of you remember putting chains on the tires. And there were, to me, there were always a lot of advantages to going to a rural school. When I talked at some of the things that my friends had, now I don't know, I've talked with people from other counties. Our county had a supervising teacher that came around to every school once a month, and she'd talk with the teacher. She'd watch how the teacher was teaching, give her advice and so forth. We'd get the part of the morning or part of the afternoon off for a recess that we could go outside and play, and the supervising teacher was talking with the teacher. But we also had it was a very special book, and I have not come across it anyplace else, but it had a special class job each month of the school year for each grade. The little first graders had just a small little poem that they would learn, but they'd also have some very simple pictures on the art study. And since there were maybe the most would be 5 or 6 people in a class, we each got a little picture about this size, whatever picture they were studying that month for our class. And we studied about the colors and all the things that the painter painted, what else, like the lady that painted all the horses, the horse fair and all those pictures. So we learned about those, and then we had to learn a poem every month from the classic poems. And I don't know, I don't think the kids even study those at all anymore. We have to learn, now there's just bits and pieces that come along, let me try and remember it, where's my Prevagen? Under the spreading oak tree, the village smithy stands, the smith is looking out there with his great and sinewy hands, and or that I was in Hiawatha, and his mother had made him the little fursuit, the warm suit with the fursuit on the inside. And we were supposed to be able to, then one day a month, to have learned those poems, and we'd have to recite them in front of the rest of the class. And that was always a very difficult thing for some people. There were other people that enjoyed getting up, showing off a little bit, like me. And but there were other people who were very bashful about it. And when I think back on it now, and you go to meetings when you're an adult, and you're asked to get up and say something, some of those same people that had so much trouble doing it when they were in school, it gave them enough experience that they could do it now. Some of those same people still have very good ideas, but they won't get up and present them to the public. Even our Christmas programs that you put up every year, we spent a lot of time studying the parts for them. And there was always, of course, the celebration that it was Christ's Christmas, and you had all the shepherds, so they borrowed all the bathrooms in the neighborhood for the shepherds. But we had put up, all the boards were down in the basement that the big boys hauled up and put up, so we had a little stage that was raised, that we'd be up a little bit, and we had green curtains that we strung across the whole end of the classroom. We had to learn to pull those carefully and not knock things over as we were pulling the curtains. But it was a big deal every year, the Christmas program. of putting it on and having to get up and perform in front of people. We learned a lot from those too.
Were all the students in it, all the different groups?
All the different students, you had to get something. Yeah, the teachers really worked. My mother had been a teacher and two of her sisters were teachers. So we had a lot of the playbooks at school that they had used so that you could use all the kids, the various sizes and ages.
Mhm.
And there was one little girl that it was at Thanksgiving she had to say a poem, and it was about the dressing with the heart and the liver and the gizzard, and she had trouble saying gizzard. She got up there and she said her poem, and the heart and the liver, and she stood there, she froze, and all of a sudden she shouted out, "The wizard!" But, all those experiences, and well, I know city schools put on plays and things too, and they learn poems and stuff, but we even had the Greek gods and the Roman gods and the Norse gods that we learned about, depending on what, different grades would have them, so that we had kind of a pretty good general education, as well as the girls took the agriculture classes in 7th and 8th grade right along with the boys, because the ladies raised the chickens. We also fed the lambs and fed the calves and took that. We had to learn the different breeds of pigs and the different kinds of Holsteins and Guernseys and the advantages of the different cows, the different kinds of chickens that you could raise, because the majority of those girls were going to marry farmers, either neighboring farms or the next township over, the next county over, so that they had to learn a lot of the things that the boys had to learn to take care of. Then when we got, I know when I was in high school, I helped the home ec teacher with some of the 7th and 8th graders from the city school, and there they had them separated. The boys had crafts and woodcraft things that they did, and the girls had sewing part of the time and cooking part of the time. But the girls in the city didn't have to learn anything about Guernsey cows or merino sheep.
Where was this at? Where did you go to school?
This is in just outside of Berlin, in Washera County.
Sure, okay.
And there were in order to graduate, you had to go in 7th grade. There was a graded school in Auroraville that had 2 rooms, and there were the first 4 grades in one room and the last 4 grades in the other one. And then we had to write a test on whatever subjects we had in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, we had to go and write a test in that. We also learned cursive writing. How many of you had all around the blackboard in your classrooms, the cursive writing, and you had to learn to do that? I had a great deal of trouble with that. My 8th grade teacher, I literally drew my pages for the book that we had to prepare in order to get, and they checked that over to graduate, because I could not keep my letters the same size. I could not, but I still think, and I'm kind of glad that they're trying to bring back cursive, and because I get letters now from my grandkids to learn how to print, and some of those letters are pretty hard to read too. But those were, we had a songbook called the Golden Book of Song, and I think there were some 50 or 75 songs in it, patriotic songs, and some were funny songs, and Oh Susanna and Old Black Joe. We had down south, Old Dixie and Old Virginia, and we learned those. A few years back, I was in Australia, And it happened to be on the Australian Service Day. We have the day in November for the Veterans Day where they wear poppies and everything. Well, this is in Australia. So, and I believe it was in the fall also. But there were some of the older veterans walking up and down the street selling the flowers. And so my daughter and I each bought a flower, and we got talking, and they said, "Where are you from? You aren't from here, you know." So we got talking, and well, then they wanted to know, did we know some of those songs? And so we started singing Old Black Joe and a couple of the other ones, and they were singing along with it, because those were songs that they liked too. And they remembered them. These were soldiers from the First World War, so they were older soldiers. And the people were walking past and looking at us. We just had a ball singing, and they seemed to really enjoy it too. Then they'd bring up another song. Do you know this one? Do you know that one? So that the different countries, you know, we had worked together in many ways. So that we had like 3 mornings a week, I think we sang songs. And of course we had we said the allusion to the flag every morning at the beginning. And we had on Fridays, we had a meeting so that we learned the laws of how to hold a meeting. We elected I think in the beginning of the year we elected a president, and then again in December we changed officers. So we had a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer, and we really didn't have any money that we took care of. But we learned the different parts, and we learned how to make an offer, you know, if we wanted to have somebody vote on something, to make a motion. We learned a little bit about how to conduct a meeting, which a lot of adults still haven't learned. But that was kind of the extent of what a rural school
Mom, didn't you also say
taught.
that you read every book there was in that school?
Well, yes, yeah, it was a limited library because you only had so much space. And, yeah, I've always done a lot of reading. We frequented the public library at Berlin a lot. And then one year, I don't know if it was Sears Roebuck or Penny's, it was a big company that gave a set of children's encyclopedias to every rural school. So there were like 24 or 36 books in the series. And since I'd read all the rest of the books that were in the school, I started that one, and I read that from the beginning to the end. There were a lot of things that, I think I was about 5th grade at the time, so there were a lot of things that were written for 7th and 8th graders that I really didn't understand. But it's still, I learned a lot of terms, and then later on I could always go back to that and do it. Another thing was, my dad was the town clerk, and with the rural schools, the schools got together, and in spring, they made out an order for whatever library books, and also school books that they were going to use, and it would go to the Eau Claire Book and Stationery Company. And about the middle of August, this great big box would come that was full of books. And my dad was the town clerk, but my mother was the lady that delivered the books to all the schools. So they took the box in the parlor, and they were spread out in the parlor, and we had to divide the books up to whatever school had ordered them. So I had a big advantage there because I knew what books were going to our school, so I didn't read those. But any books that went to a different school that we weren't going to get, I had the first chance to read those books. That was a great deal. And sometimes I'd go along with my mother when she delivered the books to the schools. So it's some of the ways that education was maybe a little different in the rural school, yes.
Just had a question. Did you have access to the Wisconsin School of the Air, Let's Sing or Let's Draw or?
Yes, we did. Yes,
those
we did.
things?
Or Ranger Mac, did you Ranger Mac?
What?
Ranger Mac?
Yeah, we didn't really use it a great deal. We used it more when I was going to County Normal, learning to be a rural school teacher. Then we used it there a lot more. But there was some difficulty. Some of our teachers had some music experience, and they could play a piano, or they could maybe play a guitar, or play some things. But some of them had no experience playing anything. So they'd have to either play records or get somebody in when you were practicing for the Christmas program to practice the Christmas carols and stuff like that. Or you'd have to have somebody that could sing along, because a couple mornings a week we'd have singing for about 10 or 15 minutes in the morning, and we'd sing songs. When I was in high school, at that time we had a teacher that didn't play the piano, and so she'd have me come out and practice with the kids a couple times a week before the Christmas program. I'd play the piano, and the kids could sing along, and because the teacher literally, I mean, you know, some people can't carry a note, and so she said we've got to have somebody that can come and play for the kids.
Did you become a teacher later in life, Marge, or?
I went to County Normal for the first year. It's a 2-year course, and I'd met my husband several years before that. We were planning on getting married. His folks were moving. They'd built a home. They moved into town. He was going to have to batch it or go down and drive back and forth. He didn't want to batch it, and we knew we were going to get married, so I got married instead.
Okay.
I just went the 1 year. But then I had, I think it was when Linda was in 4th grade, if I remember right, at our Catholic school, because our kids all went to the parochial school. This nun was 83 years old, and she'd been teaching for years and years. But not Sister Liberta, what was her name? Everybody remembers her, but anyway, she was,
I know who you're talking about, but I don't remember the name.
age was getting to her. She loved when the boys played basketball. She couldn't stay in the thing. She'd have to get out there in the middle of the floor and tell them, you have to do this. You have to do. And then she got sick. She suddenly got very sick, and they didn't have anybody the diocese didn't have anybody to send to take her place. So they needed somebody that would just organize the class and keep order. So I did work, and I was fortunate because Linda was in that grade. She knew where they were, what page they were working on the textbooks, and how they were going. So that was either for 2 weeks or 3 weeks that I filled in there and had a little teaching experience.
Marge, wasn't that Sister Agatha?
That could be,
Sister Agatha?
yeah.
Yeah, I can remember right, yeah.
Did you use a ruler, like when you had, did you like,
No,
oh, okay.
no, and I don't really recall our teachers doing that either.
Good.
Although some of the older kids said yes when they misbehaved. That
I
we
could
did
not
it.
be left.
But that was,
Yeah, I could not be left.
that was the style of teaching at that time. That was,
Yeah.
you know, spare the rod and spoil the child.
Yeah, I got it a couple
Uh,
of times.
It was very commonly done. Now you can't touch a child. You can't even take them by the shoulder and kind of guide them to their seat when they need it. It's gone from one extreme to the other. But I think it's true with so many of as we've got these people that are trying to rewrite the history books on slavery and so forth. All those people had slaves back then. That's terrible. But everybody had slaves back then. It was the way things were done. It was the way life was lived. Can't we look at history at the way it was and see it and make our changes. You can't rewrite those things.
Right.
They happen, all of them. But it was the way people lived. And we have trouble now talking with people in other countries who have other customs that are a little different. But some of the other things growing up that I had just made notes, how many of you watched the 15-minute programs after school? Tom Mix, Jack Armstrong, Don Winslow in the Navy. There were the 15-minute shows on for, I think there are probably 6 of them. With Jack Armstrong. Did any of you have the magic ring that glowed in the night that you got from Jack Armstrong? The time that he and his cousins went with the uncle to the pyramids and they found this ring. And if we sent in 2 Wheaties box tops and a nickel, we could get one of those rings. And if we would hold it under a light bulb for a little while and then go in a dark room, it would glow in the dark just like Jack Armstrong's did.
Did you get one of those rings, Marge?
Oh, yes, yes. I wish I had kept some of those things that we got.
Yeah.
Little Orphan Annie had her program on, and she would, at the end of every program, she would give you a message, because for there you needed some box tops and maybe 10 cents to get the decoder ring, and it had 2 alphabets on it that you turned around, so that if you had it the right way, then A was number 1, B was number 2, but you could change it around and A would be number 6. And so then she'd tell you what setting she had, and she'd leave you a message with all these numbers, and then you could sit and figure out what the message was.
These were radio programs that you listened to.
Those were radio
Yeah.
programs, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there was Tom Mix and the old Wrangler, Jack Armstrong and his cousins Bob and Betty, who traveled with his uncle all the time. His uncle was in science somewhere or other, so they flew all over, and flying got very. We had at that time we didn't have the EAA over at Oshkosh yet. It was in Milwaukee that Pomerezny had it, but the Milwaukee Journal always had a lot of articles on, and then in 1970 or shortly before that, they moved up to Oshkosh with it, and then we made a point of going over to Oshkosh because I had cut all those articles out and the flying, and I didn't fly until I was, I think when we were in high school, there was a plane, a little plane that would come into the county fair at Washera, and for a couple bucks, they'd take you up for a ride for a few minutes. And that was the first time I ever rode in an airplane. But my dad would take us over at the field next to it. We lived on one country road, and the next road over was a highway, a busy highway. But next to that was a field with a large pasture. And in summertime, there was a guy from Ripon who would come over with a little plane, and he'd give people rides. And my dad would take us over, and we could watch them taking off and landing. He was never willing to let us go for an airplane ride, but we could watch them do that. But there were those programs on. It was like 6 different ones, and you could get almost all of them had. In the morning was Jolly Joe with his cocoa wheats. My brothers hated cocoa wheats, and I did not like cocoa wheats either. But they had the most marvelous prizes you could get with a nickel and 2 box tops. We would persuade Mother to buy the things, and we'd choke the darn stuff down. So we could have those. How about Cracker Jacks? Did you get a lot of Cracker Jacks when you were a kid?
Yep.
They used to be a nickel a package, or 3 for a dime. My grandfather lived with us, and once a week he'd go to town. He'd get in his 1929 Model A Ford and go to town. And I had 2 brothers that were old enough at the time. He'd come home with 3 boxes of Cracker Jacks, and there was a real prize in each one. And sometimes the prizes were made, they were bent up to shape little cars or little airplanes, but if you opened them up inside, you could see that they were from a can of tomatoes or a can of green beans. We shipped the cans over to Japan and the stuff was all made up and you got real prizes in each one. And eventually, I have a little Dutch girl about this high, and I used to have a little Dutch boy that they had the little figures in them, or they had little paintings in them, or they'd have a little book in them. But then that got more expensive, so they started just having a sheet of paper with a joke on it or something. There'd be something in it that you'd get. But it wasn't like the original prizes that you got in those nickel packages. Did you, growing up, how about radio programs in the week? Did you grow up having radios in the house or not?
Fibber, McGee, and Molly.
What? Yeah, Fibber, McGee, and Molly. JELLO on Sunday nights always. Bob Hope, we never missed listening
The
to
Friday
Bob
night
Hope.
fights.
Yeah, and the Friday night fights were big things.
Brought to you by Gillette Blue Blades.
But no, some of my cousins didn't have radios. They'd had one. My grandmother was in a wheelchair for a number of years before she died, and so they had a radio for her. They also had a refrigerator, which my cousins didn't have a refrigerator either. They'd have to take the milk and butter down to the cool basement to keep it. And then, well, did you all grow up with electricity in the house?
Yeah.
What year did you get electricity?
Our house had electricity.
Oh, did it really?
Yes, yes. We had, and I know they said it was one of the first radios in the neighborhood. And I recently came across my mother's diaries that she had kept when she was in high school and going to county normal school. And at that time, one of the neighbors had gotten a radio, and they would, like, one night a week, they'd either take the horses or they'd get in the car and they'd go over and listen. And if they were lucky, there wasn't much static, and they could listen to the radio. But we had, it was a big old radio, and it would get the European stations and everything from all over. We've got a couple of the ones that we've got at the museum would do that.
Okay.
And this guy from Milwaukee used to come and he knew how to tune them. They had the separate tuners and stuff like that. But we used to like, the kids used to like listening to, like New Year's Eve. It would be this big hotel in Paris. You'd hear the music, or from someplace in London. You could get from all over the world. So I was used to the radio. But my cousins weren't nearly as much. And then my aunt got married when I was about 6.